Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. Today we're talking about 4 reasons why your spouse gets so defensive. And this is such a big topic because a lot of couples that we work with struggle with this dynamic. Often one or the other gets really defensive in the relationship, and we've definitely wrestled with it in our own marriage too. And it can be really frustrating trying to have an honest conversation or a productive conversation when one person is always defending, blaming, accusing, instead of just hearing the other person and having a heart-to-heart conversation with them.
Yeah. And a lot of times we think, okay, I need to learn how to communicate better. They're telling me that I'm not communicating right or whatever. And communication is not really the issue. And I talk about this a lot. I have had many different workshops on communication, and I have a fantastic free resource for you that we'll put in the show notes on my 3-step communication method to finally feeling heard. But spoiler alert, my masterclass is not really about here's how you communicate, because that's not the kind of coaches that we are. We really want you to get to the root of what's going on underneath and not just give you more behavioral things or keep it surface level band-aid fixes. We want it to be lasting healing for you, lasting transformation for you. And so with defensiveness, it's really not about communication. It's about the nerve that is getting hit underneath that hurts, right? I know for me, if I get defensive, it's a sign that something hurts. Like that, you're like, and then you're like, do, right? Like, I'm going to hit him with the next thing. And so defensiveness is really trying to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot like a turtle. If you think of a turtle, maybe even a snapping turtle, and you start poking a snapping turtle. We had one in our yard last year sometime, and I poked it with a stick, and it would just snap at that stick, like it would attack the stick. And then if you kept poking, it would curl up inside of its shell and hide away. And that's really what defensiveness is often like. It's either attacking back, being defensive that way, or it's like drawing back, putting up walls, making this shell that will keep you safe, or that will try to protect that hurt place inside of you that's getting poked by the conversation.
Yeah. So example, like if I say to Adam, and I have said this many times, and we have had conversations similar to this many times, where like I say to him, like, I'm feeling really lonely, or I'm feeling alone in parenting, or I'm feeling alone in this marriage. He doesn't hear, oh, she's lonely. He hears, you're failing. You're not good enough. And same thing, like I can be defensive as well. And so if he says to me something like, I don't know if you've ever actually said this, but I think this comes up a lot for wives. Like a husband says, I'd love to have more sex. And instead of she's hearing like, he wants me, she's not hearing that. She's hearing like, you're not a good enough wife. And then she feels pressured. Like, I have to do this. I have to do more. We're hearing things that are underneath that are not actually even being said. And we're going to get into like the roots of why that happens. But specifically in that example I just gave, where the wife hears like, you're not a good enough wife, and she feels pressured. Defensiveness is often coming from these unhealed wounds, and they're poked. Like, it doesn't sound like they're being poked necessarily. None of those words are hitting, but it still hurts. And so that's why we react.
Yeah. And so we're going to give you 4 root causes of defensiveness. And the first one is really an important one. This is a big one, and it's shame. And this was, for me, often at the root of a lot of the defensiveness that I was giving Cara was this shame. There's kind of like a healthy guilt that you can feel when you make a mistake. Okay, you have a little bit of sadness because you made this mistake, but then you correct and whatever. But shame is such a deeper thing because it's really not just I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. You've taken that into your identity and made that part of who you are, is that I am messed up, I am flawed, I am a mistake. And so anytime anybody brings up anything that stirs that idea up, you don't want to feel that way. It's almost confirming something in your head that you're already speaking over yourself.
Yeah.
It's confirming that, and you don't want to hear it from someone else, even though you're already telling yourself that over and over again. And it's really damaging because then it just causes this defensiveness to come roaring out. A very obvious example of this is in the Bible with Adam and Eve, when they walked outside of what God's will was and they ate from the tree. And then immediately in that shame of not only I made a mistake, not only did I do this thing, I am full of sin, I am a mistake myself. Now they're hiding from God. When God calls them out, they are like blaming each other. They're blaming God even. They're attacking back.
You said like when God calls them out, which I think is how a lot of people hear that, like God's calling their sin out, like, hey.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
I think actually that's what they heard. But what God was actually doing was inviting them in close.
Yeah.
Like God was saying, I see you. I want to be with you. I want to walk with you through this, right? I love you. But we often, like, and they were, it sounds like, hearing it like, look at what you did, bad girl, bad boy.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. Because really, you can hear God's voice differently either way. And what Kara said is really insightful, because it's not necessarily like calling them to the carpet to shame them.
Yeah.
It's like inviting them into relationship again. They stepped out of relationship and he wants them back in relationship. And so he is calling out to them with a loving invitation for them to come clean, really a loving invitation for them to be real and open and vulnerable again with him. And when they're not, that's where this defensiveness is coming from, because they're so afraid of him. They don't see him as a loving place to take that pain and that vulnerability. They see him as the hammer coming down. And so that's why they become defensive.
Yeah, and that really leads into number 2, which is fear. They're afraid, and so they hide, so they blame. And that's where a lot of times that defensiveness comes from, is actually from fear. We have these conversations, we're intending this to go well, like hopefully I'm going to feel heard, and we end up starting to fight because we're afraid of what the conversation means. She says that I'm always late, and then he's having this fear of inadequacy. I'm never going to be a good enough husband. She's going to reject me, or I'm going to be abandoned. I'm a failure. And so these fears creep in. Same thing for wives. I know for me, I remember one time, actually, anytime this happens, but it hasn't been very often, maybe because Adam like realized what a painful poke that was.
That's true, I did.
But I remember one time we were driving in the car, and this was early in our marriage. We didn't even have that many kids, maybe like 2. But he said something about my being a mom. And I don't even remember what it was, but I heard, you're not a good enough mom. And I was like, so hurt.
Yeah.
And I immediately turned it on him, because I really had a fear there of being judged, and you're not lovable. Like, you're not good enough. You're not even worthy of love if you can't get it all right. And none of that was going through my brain at the time. It was like, I was so hurt. And I immediately like lashed back. And then I just remember like turning away from him in the car. We were on a long drive, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I never cried in front of him back then.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I didn't want him to see me, and I just cried and cried. I was so hurt, and I don't even know if we ever talked about it.
I don't know.
I don't think we ever resolved it.
And it might have been from a place where like Kara was wanting me to challenge some things. And so this was some observation that I made, like, you never challenge me on anything. And so I was trying to challenge her on something, but it hit this spot. And so then I'm like, okay, I can't challenge her on anything, because that's just going to result in this really negative experience for her. And I felt horrible too, because I knew she was really hurt, but I didn't realize the wound that I had poked there.
Yeah, so these fears can be deeply painful. You know, like this fear of not measuring up, or fear of failure, of disappointing somebody. A lot of times these come from an earlier age. One of the things for me in that was like, I really wanted to be a different kind of mom. I wanted to parent differently than I was parented. And that's another reason why it extra hurt me, because I was afraid that I wasn't a different mom, that I wasn't measuring up. It's something to explore when we have anything that's deeply painful like that. These big emotions, they matter. All of our emotions matter, but these big emotions, they're an indicator like, oof, there's something there. But I love that passage in 1 John that talks about how perfect love casts out fear. And I think that's so true, because when we really walk in love and we know how loved we are, and we are just filled, we are connected, right? That love connects us. There's so many different examples you can give of that. But when you have fear about what other people think about you, fear, all that kind of stuff, it creates disconnect. Always. And it does that in marriage too. So I love that passage, because it's just such a great reminder. Perfect love, it just casts that out. Like, the fear doesn't exist when you are living in that love and in a really felt, experienced way.
So These are all really related. Like if you think about shame, if you think about the fear and all that stuff. And another one that's very prevalent, number 3, is old wounds. And old wounds can bring up fear like that. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I had old wounds really about being wrong or right. I felt very much that I was accepted growing up if I was doing the right thing, saying the right thing, being the good boy. Mm-hmm. And so a wound for me is anytime somebody seemed to be calling me to account for not being right. So if I thought she was scolding me, like, you're not doing this right, to me, that meant that you're not acceptable. And if you're not acceptable, then you're not loved, you're not enough, all those things. So anytime like she would correct me, then immediately it's almost like that little boy thing coming up again. And I would just defend because I didn't want to feel like I was not enough. I didn't want to feel like I was doing something wrong, or if somehow I can defend this really well, if I prove that I'm not doing something wrong, then that means I'm still acceptable because then I'm right.
Do you think that that also impacted like how you felt about your relationship with God? Like if you're not feeling acceptable because you do anything wrong, I'm assuming that you then also think you're not right with God.
Yeah, it's a very subtle nuance to that, but it was deep. And yes, you can say all the right things like, oh yes, well, Jesus died for me, Jesus loves me, God loves me.
Right.
But from a felt sense, if I felt like I was doing something wrong, any kind of authority figure, anybody tells me I'm doing something wrong, then I think I'm not loved. And I think ultimately God is doing the same thing. Ultimately, God is saying you're not enough here.
Yeah, it's like so much religious programming in your brain, which is sneaky because on the surface it's also like, yeah, he loves you. Yeah,
right.
But then
the
underneath
words
it's
are
like,
all the
no.
same, but the actual experience of it, the actual felt experience of it is you're not enough if you don't do things right, if you don't get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just one example. I mean, there was a lot of other little wounds and things, but that was a big one for me, and that was a big one that often caused defensiveness. And that's why healing is so important. That's why going back into these times when you were a kid, when you were experiencing that wound, and finding healing and knowing that you're loved, knowing that you're accepted just the way you are, that God has perfectly loved you and been there with you the whole time, and starting to really experience that love from those moments. And now when you're feeling that way again, it starts to bring this deposit of safety inside of you, this groundedness that comes because you know, hey, I am loved. It starts to heal that wound inside of you, and you start to show up very differently just because you're living from a loved place instead of this insecure place based on that wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, experiencing God's love is so different than just saying, yeah, I know God loves me. It's so different. And experiencing it is what heals. Like God's love is so healing when you are really experiencing it. And I think like regularly, it's not just like a once in a while thing. When you're inviting him in and you're very connected, you have this beautiful intimate relationship with God where you share it all, you spill it all, and then you're always met with love. You're always met with compassion. I was just coaching a wife today and I was helping her to experience God's love and compassion, and she's just crying and sobbing because she was not seen like that in her life. She was not met with compassion and love in big pain before in her life. And so it was so moving for her. And I've experienced that myself so many times too. It's so powerful. And when you're in marriage and you're trying to communicate and all that, you can't separate your marriage from your unhealed wounds. They're going to meet.
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
going to create all kinds of things coming up.
Which is a good thing because it exposes these wounds. It exposes this stuff so that you can heal it. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know it was there. You'd be able to live without that place getting poked and brought to the surface and actually healed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And number 4 is, again, kind of connected here. It's your identity. And many Christians actually are living from this identity of slave instead of child of God. And Adam was kind of talking about that for himself. And if I would have asked him back then when he was a little boy, he would have said, yeah, I know I'm a child of God. If I ask him that now, he says the same thing.
Right.
He's always said that.
Yeah.
But he wasn't living like that. That wasn't his experience. He was living more of a slave to doing all the right things and being a people pleaser and being a good boy.
Yep.
And
knowing the truth and actually living out of the truth are completely different things. Like the head knowledge and the heart knowledge. And God's promises are for sure real, but if we just put them in our head, if we just take them in and we speak them over ourselves that way without letting them actually sink in and affect the heart and really experience the truth of what God is saying to us and how he actually sees us, then we don't find that healing deep inside, and we end up living from that unloved place, from the slave mentality.
I was just reading in Romans 8 earlier this afternoon, and I encourage you to read that if you struggle with this. And there's no shame in admitting, I'm seeing some of these things. I'm seeing that I feel kind of like a slave to performing and to being good and doing the right things. That chapter talks about how beautiful God's love is for you and reminds you that you are a secure child of God. You have this incredible, we all want this. We want to feel secure. We don't want to feel like love for us is based on behavior, or like none of us want to be that way, but a lot of us are living in that place. And I know for me, my identity was based so much on performance, which is why when Adam poked at my mothering, like I was like, whoa, because I am trying to be the best mom ever, right?
Yes.
And that's one thing that will get me teary usually, is like thinking about how I am as a mom. And I'm like, oh, and I think us moms are so hard on ourselves. We are like trying to do everything perfectly, which no one is perfect, but you are doing a beautiful job. But I was living so much in performance and feeling like I needed to be perfect, and I needed to, be more than enough, I think, to feel noticed. That was some of my unhealed wounds there. And my identity that I grew up in was like, you need to be the best. Your value is like wrapped up in what you do. Yeah. So you need to do more. You need to keep going. You need to do better. And that is draining. That is exhausting. And then when you do get criticized, that feels like a massive threat to your value, right? Your value as a human being is threatened. And so, of course, you're going to go to defensiveness because you want to feel valuable. You want to feel like you're worth something. And so that was definitely part of it for me, which is why it's just so sweet to know that I am God's daughter. And as his daughter, this has been so healing for me to really soak this in deeply in me, is like, you are his daughter and you have access to everything you need at any moment. Like Adam avoiding what we need to be dealing with. I might want to jump into control, or that resentment might want to creep up, but I come back to like, nope, I have everything I need. I'm the daughter of the King, the creator of the world. I have access to everything. I'm good. Adam wants to show up that way. Like, I can address it, speak the truth in love, but I'm good. I don't need him to be a certain way to be okay.
Yeah. And the same is true for husbands too. Like if your wife is showing up a certain way, or she's being critical or whatever, rather than needing to be defensive, you just rest in the fact that I am everything I need to be in God, and he has me, and I don't need to defend myself here. I can be open and honest and raw and real, and I can validate her experience and everything, and I can show up as this loved human being that I am, loved by God, and that gives you so much more capacity to love your wife well too. And what you see naturally happen then is defensiveness decreases when you really become secure in your identity. When that is so rock solid, and I've had some practice with this because now that we put ourselves out there on social media and lots of eyeballs on our content, we get lots of very rude, negative comments and very personal attacks sometimes. And before, I might have crumbled under some of those things, right? It's like, oh geez, am I really that ugly? Like it's not even about marriage. It's not even about the content. It's just like, you're a horrible mother. You're a, anyway. Terrible. So I have had some practice in like coming to God and saying like, who do you say I am? I love asking him that question, especially if you're feeling a little insecure. Come to him, because he's going to remind you over and over again, nope, you're good. You're good. I love you. I'm proud of you, right? That security that you have, it never changes, right? When you were little, it may have changed with your parents. Like,
You got an A+. Okay, now let's take you out for ice cream. Good job. You're amazing. And then, oh, you get a D. Okay, you're getting grounded for a month. And, so it's very easy to see how our identity can be tainted by other things. But God doesn't do that. No matter what happens, no matter how you're showing up, he meets you with love. He runs to you, right? Just like that lost son in that parable. And the father runs to his son. That is God. That is a picture of his love for you. He is running to you. He wants to be that close to you.
And he wraps his arms around the son, and he gives you everything. He threw a whole feast for him, and he ran away and all this stuff, but the father loved him that much.
Yeah, it's not about your behavior. That does not inform your identity. You just are. Because you're you. You are valuable.
Yes.
You are loved. And that is secure. That is forever.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about what defensiveness looks like or sounds like when it happens in real time. And it shows up in a lot of different ways. But all of it is all about that self-protection. Instead of really taking ownership or trying to understand, it's all about self-preservation, self-defense. So one of the ways is like a counterattack. They say something like, hey, you're late all the time. Well, you didn't have dinner ready, so you come out with another attack. Well, it's not me, it's you.
Yep.
Like that's a really easy way that defensiveness shows up. Another one is that you put up a lot of explanations before you even try to understand. The wife says, I'm feeling lonely. And a husband is feeling insecure about that and is like, well, I've been here 5 days after work. I was home early the other day. And he can give all these different explanations of why she shouldn't feel that way. Rather than just understand that she's feeling that way and validate that and then seek to understand that, he wants to give all these facts and this information, kind of like a lawyer, where you just list off all the different reasons why whatever he or she said is not the case. And you just go one after the next. You just try to overwhelm it with a bunch of facts. Another way this shows up is when you focus more on what you were intending rather than what actually impacted the person or what actually hurt them. So like, well, I didn't mean to. What I really meant was, I used to do this a lot in our relationship. And it's fine to have a good intent, but that doesn't actually minimize what's going on for the other person. Like your intent doesn't really matter. The impact that you had on them is what really matters. So you giving your intent is just a way of trying to defend yourself instead of actually understand what they're going through and validate what they're going through. And another way is to really like kind of crumble and play the victim. This is kind of like the turtle shell where you crawl inside. It's like, well, I'm just never good enough. I always do the wrong thing. You like let that shame out and almost like a cry for pity.
Yeah,
or, like it's self-pity and it's a cry for pity. And it's like by crumbling into that shell, you make it all about yourself. I'm the victim here, rather than they're coming to you with a concern or they're coming to you with a feeling and some hurt or whatever. And now you've just made it all about yourself and all about this feeling you have of being inadequate or whatever it is.
So it's hard, right? It's definitely hard to try to communicate and your spouse is getting defensive. So what do you really need to do in that situation? What they really need, whether this is the husband or the wife, because we both do this, right? I've gotten defensive, Adam's gotten defensive, regardless of if you're the husband or wife, your spouse needs safety, right? Because remember, it's like a poke, it hurts, and that safety is going to be so much more helpful for them being able to come back to who they are more than any correction will be, right? You telling them, you're getting defensive again. Would you stop? You're always making excuses. You're going into self-pity. Look at you. You're being a victim again. And I used to do that to Adam because it was the same behavior over and over again and it was driving me crazy. And so I would correct, but that was not helping anything. What he needed was safety and for me to really be curious. And I'm not saying you need to ignore the issue. I shouldn't just allow Adam to go into self-pity and go into this whole, I'm the worst husband, you never should have married me. I'm not going to just let him keep doing that and act like it's okay. But I want to create an environment where he can receive the truth in love. If he's feeling unsafe with me, if he's feeling that pain of whatever I poked, he's not going to be able to receive what I'm saying even if I'm trying to say it in a really loving, gentle way, because he's hurting from that thing I poked. And then a lot of times we go into, criticism, and then it's like even more, it just hurts more.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to create this environment where they can feel safe and they can receive that truth. And another important part of this is to live from your true identity. Like I was just talking about a little bit ago, when you are really grounded in who you are, and you're not grasping to get them to react a certain way to you. Like, I'm going to share this with him, but I don't need him to respond in a certain way to be okay. I'm going to be okay because I've gotten my needs met with God. I'm overflowing with love, and that's just who I am. And now I can listen to what his reaction is. I can observe it. I can get curious. I can even offer compassion. And it's not that I'm going to make it all about him. You mattered in what you shared, but we can meet each other with more compassion that way.
Yeah, and so it's really important to ask some key questions when this is going on. What are they trying to protect right now? What is going on under the surface? What is the deeper thing that they are defending with this defensiveness? Is there some insecurity there? Is there a fear there? Is there an identity issue that may be behind all of this? What is the wound that's getting poked by what I'm saying? And so curiosity can be a really powerful move here to create that safety for them when they're getting defensive.
And you don't necessarily need to ask them those questions.
No,
like, what wound is being poked?
Yeah.
Those are questions that you're reflecting on. Is there an insecurity that's being brought up here, right? Or is there a fear? And so that getting curious is key, but often we can't go to curiosity if we're really hurting ourselves, right? We just go to criticism, or we go to our own self-protection. So it's really important to notice, like if you're like, I don't want to ask him questions, he's being a total jerk, or she's so off base here and whatever, then that's an indicator that your heart needs something. You need some validation, or you're needing to get some needs met. You can get those needs met with God too. So come back to who you really are, right? Then you're going to be able to be overflowing with love, and you're going to be able to be curious. And that's going to really help with the communication in general. And like I said, I do have that free masterclass for you if you'd like to take a peek at it. It's really valuable. Again, it's not just surface level tips. It helps you to go deeper. It's specifically for wives. I know husbands, you're like, I get a lot of husbands who ask me for this link, and I'm like, well, it's for women, but maybe you want to share it with your wife. I don't know.
I have something for men too, and it's my Master This Moment, which is a private audio library, audio coaching that you can access anytime with a click of a button, which helps you through certain specific situations in your marriage that you might find yourself in. Maybe you're starting to get defensive, or maybe your wife is coming at you with some criticism and you don't know how to respond. These audio files help coach you through those exact situations and get grounded and get clear on what your next steps are, and how to reset into your identity in Christ again and show up from a loved place, whole, and able to handle the conversation in a much healthier way.
Yeah. So links to both of those really helpful resources are in the show notes. And we'd love to hear where you're at, because I know sometimes this can be one of the most painful things in marriage. It sounds as simple as, communication. This isn't that hard, but no, it's so painful when it is not going well. And when you're brave, you try to start another conversation and then it just ends in more pain. And you're like, why do I even bother? So we get it. This can be a really painful thing. We're here. Reach out, ask any questions, and we will see you next week.